All right. So, welcome everybody to the weekly review. I'm going to cover over the trades that I took this week, why I took them, and then we'll start getting into my expectations going into the next week, what my plan is, and what I will be looking for. All right. So, this week I was 3 for 3. I took 3 trades, 3 wins. I took 2 on Euro, 1 on CAD, and I'll talk about those now. So, if we go on over to dollar, right? So everything starts with dollar. And what I wanted to show you guys, right? If we think in terms of market profiling on dollar, what are we seeing right now? So dollar on a monthly chart is rejecting highs and breaking lows. Okay. So it is reasonably expected that we are going to continue this until proven wrong. Okay. Therefore, the fact that we are above monthly highs and running into a monthly breaker and also a yearly order block tells me the likelihood is that price is going to continue this trend. Now, if it doesn't, that's okay, but simply following and probing order flow, it is likely to seek some form of reversal here. All right, meaning that weekly order flow and daily order flow is likely at some point to begin a shift. Right, that's the framework that I'm working within right now. Right, until this key level is broken, I will be expecting that. Okay. So within the idea that dollar is likely to go lower, I'm seeking buys on euro. Okay. Now, what key levels does euro have in play? Well, we have a quarterly FVG right here that we're running into. We have a daily breaker inside of this FVG. If we go over here, low, high, lower, low, close above, right? This confirms this candle as a breaker. If we drag it out, okay. So the fact that dollar is ready to deliver lower is telling me that I want to be seeking buys inside of key levels on euro. All right. So that was the idea going into the week. Now, how did I trade this? Once dollar hit the yearly order block and started delivering higher here, okay, I took a long entry here. Okay. Why here? Because this was during the kill zone. So it was during New York session. It was the first time we had an hourly low put in and a sweep of it. Okay. At the same time this was being swept, GBP took out its low inside of its relative key level, the monthly rejection block here. Okay. So the fact that this was all happening at the same time gave me confluence to want a long euro here. And the same time I longed euro, I simply split my risk and I shorted CAD as well. Also inside of course, a key level above a high. All right. So that was the context behind the setup. Now, my third entry and my final entry was once we created a daily rejection block off of this low, I traded this soup here as well. Okay, 15-minute low. We range, we come into this. After New York had an expansion, so I was expecting some form of OTE. Okay, we have a soup, a shift in structure. This is the entry right here. All right, so that was the idea going throughout the week. Now, some interesting key levels and lows chosen on EU trades. Yeah, and I'll explain it in a sec. So it's obviously it's going to be a bit more difficult when you're trying to catch a low of year, right? Or you're trying to catch a high time frame reversal. It's going to be a lot more difficult to catch the very bottom than if you're catching some form of like 4-hour continuation, right? Because that's a much longer term setup. Therefore, the number one, the stop loss and the time that it takes for an actual reversal to form is going to be much more, right? So looking at price right now, it's not clear to me, and this was kind of the question I was asking myself going into last week, was when is the reversal going to form in terms of time? Okay, because this is the end of the month. We have 2 days or 3 days, I guess, to the end of the month. All right. So Is it likely that the reversal is going to form here, or is it going to wait for next month? Okay, so that's kind of the question I've been asking myself, right? Now, how can we infer that? Well, once we tap the level, is the level producing key levels for expansion, or is it ranging, right? If it's ranging, it's likely that the next monthly candle can open, soup, expand, right? And looking at price action now, it's not very clear in the fact that we're expansive, okay? This gap is still holding. We had a large rejection, okay? There's no clear shift off of this low. So in my opinion, I think that price action is likely going to range here for one more soup of this low or SMT, right? And obviously we would see the exact same thing over here, some form of range, consolidation, a soup, and a dump, okay? And I'm framing that based on time. All right, does that make sense to everyone? Why I would be cautious going into early next week, right? Even though you're bullish, there's different parts of trading, right? You can have bias, but you have to be able to know how to align yourself with that bias, right? If price is bullish, but you're trading in a range, you're still going to lose, right? So you have to understand how to actually apply that bias in the correct way. What's for me now, and even remember exactly 24th of October, too soon what time of period didn't align my eyes. Yeah. Lower time from price action isn't supporting the idea of this being the low of year yet, right? So I'm cautious until, possibly if we get a clear shift, then I can start trusting this low. But until then, I want to be cautious of a next week sweep, all right? And with NFP on Friday and the new monthly candle opening on Wednesday, it's very possible that we get something, like this. NFP, dump, and then pop. Okay? So that's the idea behind Euro this week, okay, and going into next week. Of course, GBP as well. GBP has this monthly rejection block here. I want to see if next month wants to open low, take out some lows, and then deliver higher. So same kind of thought process over here. That's why I didn't push it this week. Seemed like a clear. Yep, exactly. Yep, it's important to understand, especially for everyone new here, is you never want to just think of something one directionally, right? So you don't want to think, oh, I'm bullish, so I want a long. You have to think, what are all the possible outcomes of price, right? Just because I'm bullish here doesn't mean price can't range and soup next month. Doesn't mean price can't consolidate. Doesn't mean price can't soup here and just expand. So it's important to understand all the different possible outcomes and then weigh them towards what price action is actually doing. All right. Let's go into NASDAQ. All right. So NASDAQ is quite an interesting one. This is what I saw last week. I know some of you guys traded this. I saw that US 30 took out this high and we started rejecting it. We took out this high and we started rejecting it. If you guys saw the bias and order flow video, when we reject a high, it's likely we seek some form of low before continuing higher. Okay, so when we get this SMT on this high here and it's a rejection, it tells me that NASDAQ is more than likely going to seek some form of low, right? Which would invalidate all of these key levels in here. And we'd be seeking sell side. Okay, so that was the idea going in to the week. We had a stop run, a close below, and a daily gap here. Okay, and this was a super clean short. No, I fully got out of NAS, dude. I only took that on prop, not my live, which is why I guess I can break it down quick. I did take a position on NAS, but again, it wasn't on my live account. It was just on prop. But I did take this daily gap soup in here. 8:30 news manipulated, created a gap, and I traded this gap down to this low. Okay, super simple. Bias, lower, We had a turtle soup with news, created a 15-minute change in order flow, entry, target. Yes, that would, Mir. I don't usually trade NASDAQ, which is why I wanted this to be a shorter term position. Okay. But going into next week again on NASDAQ, I would expect delivery towards these lows. If we're delivering towards these lows, what key levels do we have? Well, on a weekly chart, we have an order block. This order block is right above this high here, and it also aligns with this breaker. So this looks like a very high probability setup, in my opinion, that price could possibly range, manipulate, and then deliver lower from this weekly order block here. Right? I would be careful. I'd watch if price is likely just to start dumping through these lows, then a possible continuation inside of a gap or something would work as well. All right. Let's go to gold. For those of you who are insane and trade gold. For me, gold is just bearish. It's a little bit more difficult to analyze a market that is just straight up, straight down, because there's no real structure to tell you how deep this retracement can go. So, because yes, we are in a quarterly gap here, but it hasn't produced any sort of worthwhile expansion from here. So I would expect just a continued sell-off until proven wrong. Right, so just following probing order flow, because we respected a weekly, a daily's bearish. Okay, we rejected this low, likely some form of retracement. Okay, but overall, just not the cleanest price action. But if you are to trade it, I would just expect continued move lower. And then last but not least, let's go to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's an interesting one, I think, going into this week. Or excuse me, not this week, this month. So like I've been telling you guys, Bitcoin is either likely to bottom in this gap or in this order block. Okay. These are the two areas of positioning that I'm looking for a longer term positioning higher. Okay. If we go to a quarterly, this quarterly candle opened high, rejected this breaker, and is delivering lower. So you should not seek buys inside of this candle. I don't believe that this candle is going to continue higher. Right? And it looks to me that because of that, this is not a soup. Right? Now, yes, we are rejecting the low for now, but this candle was an open high, delivered lower, and is closing. Okay? So, in my opinion, I don't think this is a great time to long. Okay? Now, going into next quarter, we'll see, especially if this possibly closes inside, but I am favoring right now that this is going to be the target, that this low is going to be the soup, and that this is where the higher time frame reversal is going to form to deliver higher from. Okay. So this is kind of the framework going into Bitcoin. So if you were to short, we have what? We have a monthly order block that's going to be created, which will be above this high here. So this could be a possible short idea, something like this. All right. Any questions over any of those? For your trades this week, how did you manage it? Good question. For my trades this week, and this is something I've been doing recently, is I don't break even. Okay. Why don't I break even? Because my invalidation point, wherever I'm putting my stop loss, it's the invalidation point for my key level. Okay. Until my targets are hit, my key level isn't invalidated. Right. Now, when price starts to expand and we start meeting opposing targets, right? Like we start filling in this gap, we start reaching liquidity pools on a lower time frame. Okay. That's when I start monitoring, should I stay in this position Should I partial? Right. For example, I'm fully out of this position here. Okay. After I saw that we went above this high, we closed below here, and that we weren't expanding, I closed. Okay. So it's more so I'm just trusting the key level. And then once we get an expansion, I'm seeking and trying to understand if I should stay in this position or if I should hold. And if lower time frame price action is supporting my idea or not. Yes, shots. Yeah, I can check that, Leo. Is this like an AI coin? Looks good though. We have a breaker. Low. Yeah, looks good for a pump higher here. But again, right, especially for like alts and stuff like this, they all run off of Bitcoin, right? So if Bitcoin's going to go lower, these alts are also going to go lower. So that's one thing I would say is it's important to have those in combination. Yeah, what about GBP CAD? All right, if I were to analyze GBP CAD, I would say on a monthly perspective, we're bullish. On a weekly perspective, we're bullish. Why? We're rejecting lows, closing through highs. Okay. What key levels do we have? Well, we have a weekly breaker here. Okay. Inside of this weekly breaker, we have a stop run here, right? Look, I'm not using CRT as a pattern. I'm seeing, does the CRT have a stop run inside of a key level, right? If it does, that means that this low is sponsored, right? So instead of looking at this as a pattern, I'm bullish and I expect bullish key levels to hold. We have a bullish key level. This low right here is a stop run inside of that key level and a shift. Okay, now I trust this to hold, right? Now that I trust this to hold, how can you trade this? Well, what key levels has this created? Well, not much, right? Actually, it's quite consolidative. Okay, so because there's no true key levels in the chart right now, I would avoid trading this, right? There's no sponsorship. Really, the only key level is this daily rejection block all the way down here, right? So because a lack of key level means a lack of sponsorship. If there's no order block for smart money to buy from, we're going to be sideways, which is what we're seeing, right? Again, just because you have a bias doesn't mean you can trade that bias. Bias and alignment of that bias are two different things. You have to have both in combination to successfully, make money, right? Just a bias isn't enough for you to trade a chart. You have to be able to understand how you can get into that bias. And with this chart, there's no key level sponsorship to tell me I can trade from here to here, right? Versus Euro, we have the daily or the quarterly gap, the daily breaker. We're bullish. We're seeking soups for higher, right? There's context behind why we can trade this bias here versus that chart. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. Anyone else got any questions while I'm here today? Yeah, anytime, man. Do a quick Q&A. Where's your SO for your first EU long? Good question. Okay, so whenever you, and I really want to put an emphasis on this because I truly believe that your invalidation level, your stop loss, is way more important than your entry. Entry honestly doesn't matter. You guys are like, I've gotten many messages how I enter or whatever. The entry does not matter. if your stop loss is in the correct place, you can literally set an alarm and just enter. Entry honestly does not matter. Stop loss is important. Stop loss is, I always think of it like this. Whatever key level I'm trading, I want my stop loss at a level that if that key level is invalidated, I'm wrong. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to have your stop loss at a level that you can get stopped out, but your key level still holds, right? So I'm always thinking, where's an actual invalidation point for the level that I'm trading? So if I go over here on Euro and I mark the daily breaker that I was trading here, okay? So I'm trading this breaker. I'm trading the soup of this low, okay? So what would be an invalidation point for this breaker? Well, if I go to the left here, okay, what's below this breaker? Well, we have a low protected by a breaker, and it's also an intermediate term low below this range, right? So this was my determined stop loss point for this key level. So when I took a soup here, of this low, that's where my stop was, okay? And now I want to tell you guys this again. When you're trading yearly reversals and higher time frame reversals, you can't expect to have the same stop loss as if you're trading, a next day continuation on an hourly order block, right? It's you have to understand there's different times for smaller stop losses and there's different times for bigger stop losses, right? You have to understand what level it is you're trading and how you can position yourself within that level instead of thinking every trade you take can have a 5 pip stop loss, because that's just not unlikely, right? Again, if I'm trying to catch low of year, my stop's going to be a lot bigger than if I'm trying to catch a 4-hour order block continuation, right? That's just how it is. Yeah, anytime. All right. Any other questions while we're on here today? Want to make sure you guys are all ready for next week. Most of the times it stays a week after it's going to be better regrowth. Yep. All right. Well, it looks like for the most part, you guys all understand. So I'm going to wrap up the review here. I hope it was insightful. Before we do that, hold on. Alberto, when you use the body or wick of the breaker. So this is pretty much the same for order blocks and breakers. Whenever the breaker or order block has a large body, you always use the body. 90% of the time, I'm using the body. Okay. But if the breaker or order block has a very long wick, that's when you want to use the wick. Okay. But still, 90% of the time, I'm going to be using the body. All right. Unless it has a very large wick. Okay. So that's kind of how I differentiate. All right. But I hope you all have a good rest of your weekend. Let's make some money this next week. We'll see what price action has for us come market open. And we'll stop the recording here.